Masih 18 menit sih.
Bu Rosmaida malah nggak ada suara.
Kocak ya.
Iya, si Prof Amany malah ada. Nggak ada jawaban mau share apa enggak. Tapi pas di awal, apa terbaik, nggak balas, terima kasih Pak. Gitu ya.
Betul, sayang, sorry aku lagi fokus sayang. Ya aku lagi coba. bukannya webinarnya bahasa Inggris. Belum saya. Terus yang aku udah bikin background ulang ya.
Dari teman ada dong.
Buset sih udah di live stream. Live streamnya itu. Ingat kamu dulu, gampang. Syarif nggak WA kan? Iya, masukin ibu itu ya, ibu Rosmaida.
AM7-nya kecil sih.
Aku masukin ibu Rosmaidanya ya. Kamu udah pakai backgroundnya? Aku stop live stream dulu ya.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I have your attention, please.
Waiting dulu, I'm able. Oke. Live stream udah jadi. Yes, udah jadi juga. Keren. Oke.
Yes. So, good morning, everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention? The presentation is about to begin. So, first, please allow us to record the webinar. Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention? The presentation is about to begin. webinar. Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention? The presentation is about to begin. Maybe it is because of YouTube or.
Iya.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention? The presentation is about to begin.
Discontinue.
Discontinue. Okay. First of all, please allow me to record the webinar. Maybe can you give me access to record it? First of all, you already recorded.
This is already recorded.
Webinar. Maybe
Suara YouTube.
give me access to record it.
What's happening?
You already recorded. Sorry, everyone. Yeah, now it's okay, right?
Yes.
Yes, finally. So, is it already recorded? So
Yes.
I'm asking for, yeah. So everyone, please allow me to start the webinar today. Basically, this webinar is conducted in English, but we are very welcome to all of you who want to speak Indonesian or Bahasa Indonesia, because all of our speakers, even though from some of them from the Netherlands, that they already speak Bahasa Indonesia very fluently. Maybe we can go later to introduce them why they can speak Indonesian. So the honorable audience, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we would like to greet everyone a lovely Thursday today, the 1st July 2021, on the first of batch 1, the Understanding Papua Series 2021 webinar with the title of Future Education in Papua. So good morning, Europe, and maybe good midday in Europe, and good afternoon, Indonesia. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera bagi kita semua. Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya. This webinar basically hopes that in addition to discussing facts about the progress of education in Papua, we hope that the speakers will also offer or give some fresh ideas, or Indonesian, we call it gagasan or idea, and that can be alternative solutions for the process of improving and progressing the education in Papua, basically for all Papuan people in general. So over the next few minutes, we will be listening to our great speakers, doctors and professors from several universities in the Netherlands. That is from Vrije Universiteit Amsterdam, Dr. Freek, and our guest speakers also from Indonesia. And because of that, we are very honored because the speakers, they are involved in education, particularly in Indonesia. So we are now today very honored to join this webinar and to excited to conduct the webinar. So my name is Limida Tetra Oktorarinta. Currently, I'm an online lecturer at the Indonesia Open University. And on behalf of the community, mainly Rotary International Club in the Netherlands, I would like to extend a very warm welcome to all of you. We appreciate you taking off your busy schedules to join us today. And we hope that today we will learn a lot and sharing, and also get inspirations and spirits and new experiences. and hopefully that this webinar will be engaging. So all participants, if you have any questions, you can also put it in the chat room anytime you want. So it's also for sure to save our times. And so I used to live in Papua for around 7 years when I was a little in kindergarten. However, it was many years ago, very long time ago. So I'm not updated about the situation in Papua right now. So I'm so curious and very glad and excited to get updated from some of the speakers. We have some best quotes from Professor Albert Einstein. Maybe some of you or maybe all of you already know, from Leiden, Netherlands. Albert Einstein said that education is not the learning of facts, but the training of the mind to think. And quotes from Mark Wilson, Rotary Club member: when you teach somebody how to read, they have that for a lifetime, and it ripples through the community one by one. So on behalf of primarily Rotary International Club in the Netherlands, supported by IM7 Indonesia Edukasi and Indonesia-Netherlands Partnership, and to our speakers from Vrije Universiteit Amsterdam, from Indonesia, our guest speakers, UIN, in Universitas Islam Negeri Syarif Hidayatullah Jakarta, and Universitas Negeri Medan. Welcome, Prof. We welcome to all of you in this webinar entitled Future Education in Papua. So again, I would like to welcome the webinar. Hopefully we can make this morning or afternoon in Indonesia not just wonderful, but also a day full of spirits, learning, and experiences. So before the presentations begins, allow us please to open the seminar first with the opening remarks by Mr. SJG Ebert Litai, LLB LLM. He is the second of former world president, Indonesian diaspora, and also the founder of Indonesian diaspora in the Netherlands. So please let us call on Mr. SJG Ebert Litai, LLB LLM, for our opening remarks. Big hands for Mr. SJG Ebert Litai.
First of all, thank you so much. And I'm really honored that my former teacher, Dr. Freek, Colombijn, can attend. So special thank you for that. And also thank you for Ibu Professor Amany Lubis and Ibu Rosmaida Sinaga. I'm really glad that we can all come together because we actually have one thing in common. Want to build Indonesia, membangun nusa dan bangsa. And with that, it really fits in what the Rotary International wants to do. Rotary has 7 avenues, 7 focus areas. Sorry, I cannot remember them, so I have to write them down. So one of them is peace and conflict, so find reconciliation, disease prevention, water and sanitation, maternal and child, economy and community development, and also, of course, environment. But more after all, today we're going to discuss about education, about how we can bring education in Indonesia, but specifically in Papua, to a next level. We all know Indonesia is unity in diversity. We're all different, but actually we're all one. And actually we all have one heart. Hati merah putih. We're all together for Indonesia and building the country. And today I'm really glad and really honored that we can have experts from Indonesia like Professor Amany, Professor Rosmaida, who have done historical research on Papua and the Dutch colony. And of course, our honored guest, Dr. Freek, who is actually a really Dutch guy. But guys, if you want to ask something, kalau galau, you can ask Dr. Freek in Bahasa Indonesia, and he even will answer you back in Bahasa Indonesia. And actually, I want to find out what can we do, because as you know, Indonesia from Sabang to Merauke, it's really like in Europe from Ireland to Kazakhstan. It's like 8 hours flying. Imagine you can have free call in that big of area without roaming. But with that big, vast land, we also are going to look specifically this time to Papua. Because in Papua, sometimes people want to educate, want to go to school, but there is no school. In other areas, there is a school, but it's hard to come. So today, actually, I hope that we can come together and find some creative solutions, out of the box solutions. Perhaps even we can have blessing in disguise from the corona, like how can we get the education more to the people so we can really make Indonesia good, big, and great. Not great again, then I'm actually stealing a quote from someone else. I think I should not do that, and then it would not have a good connotation, but I think I'm not going to talk too much. Actually, I want to hear more from Dr. Freek, from Professor Amany, from Dr. Rosmaida, what their solutions could be, what we can do to help in this specific case, the education of our children in Papua. So I don't want to talk too much because, yeah, as you see, we've already have jam karet. It's actually a little bit also our culture, but it's actually our charm. In Indonesia, they will think, yeah, it's jam karet, we're too lenga, it's too wide, loose. But the other side, you can also see things on another perspective. We are more flexible. We have more opportunities, space to move on. And with the space to move on, we can also have space to think out of the box, to have good solutions. So with this, actually, I don't want to talk too much, or else you think, yeah, he's still young, he's already pikun, he's already forgetting things. So actually, I want to give the floor first back to the MC, or else she will be mad at me. But I want to give the floor to the other speakers. And I hope you all will have a good meeting, and hope you all have good questions. Because it's always good if you want to have a solution that everyone becomes part of a solution. Everyone can have an input, and we have together come to a product. So create a sense of belonging for a good and better future for all of us. Thank you so much, and have a lot of success today. Terima kasih.
Thank you, Bapak Ebet SJG Ebet Litai. Oh, sorry for the pronunciation. This name is a bit unfamiliar for me. So, basically the conclusion from Bapak SJG from the opening remarks, that to be noticed that maybe also that there are some programs from Indonesia government, yeah, Bapak Ebet, that have already some scholarships from LPDP and from religion department in Indonesia. And also, the good thing is also there are some scholarship I heard, but I'm not sure. So there are also scholarship from exactly from the state or the government, a local government in Papua, that they are encouraged for all Papuan people to study until for PhD degrees, but I'm not sure for other things. So now I would like, please allow me to introduce our guest speakers. First of all, we have three great speakers. First, Dr. Freek Colombijn, the second, Prof. Dr. Amany Lubis, and the third, Dr. Rosmaida Sinaga. So let me introduce the first speaker. Actually, I don't remember all of the achievement of Dr. Freek, not Freek, sorry, Freek. This is in Netherlands, Colombijn. He obtained his PhD in social sciences from Leiden University. His research interests include urban anthropology, environmental sustainability, environmental history, football, and also many other things. But most of his field work is done in Indonesia. And that's why maybe, perhaps, that's he can speak Indonesian very, very fluently. So any one of you later want to ask in Bahasa Indonesia, please, we are very welcome. And regarding the football, I don't know yet whether he still choose the Dutch football team, because they failed and lost to win in European Cup. So let's see, but at least we are very proud. So basically, he has been co-supervisor for many PhD theses of some of PhD students from Indonesia. So therefore, he has the authority to speak today. And the question in Bahasa Indonesia will be very welcome. So feel free to answer Bapak Dr. Freek Colombijn in Indonesian or in English, doesn't matter. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Dr. Freek Colombijn to speech. All right, Dr. Freek Colombijn, the floor is yours. I mean, the screen is yours.
Terima kasih sekali, thank you. Selamat siang, Bapak-Bapak, Ibu-Ibu.
Sorry, I cannot hear you, Dr. Freek.
You cannot hear me?
Hello, hello. Still, I cannot hear you.
Yeah, I can hear
Better
you
now? Okay, let me check the settings.
Okay, now I can hear you.
You can hear me now? The settings were okay just a minute ago.
We can hear you, Dr. Freek.
You can hear me?
Yes, we were a little bit in Dutch, Oost-Indisch doof.
Okay, so it's okay now. Once again, thank you for the invitation. I feel very honored. Terima kasih sekali. Saya mulai dalam bahasa Indonesia, tapi langsung pindah ke bahasa Inggris karena ya badan di Belanda, otak di Belanda, jadi lidah Belanda berbahasa Indonesia sekarang sulit sekali. Jadi saya mau menerangkan, saya ahli antropologi. Saya kerja di lapangan di Indonesia sejak tahun 1985. Mungkin banyak belum lahir. Tapi itu di Pulau Jawa, Pulau Sumatera. Saya pernah ke Pulau Ambon hanya 2 hari, tapi belum pernah ke Papua. Dan saya juga ahli sejarah. But I'm not an expert on education. And so what I would like to do is to give a more general introduction about especially the need of history and teaching of history, education in history. And I think what I have to share now is also relevant for the development of Papua or the development of Indonesia in general. But please forgive me, I'm not an expert on Papua, so I will not speak about Papua as such. And I would like to make first a general point, and that is, I think in education, it is very important to study history as well. We need history to understand the society of today. Every society is the outcome of a historical process. Let me give an example of my own teaching at the Vrije Universiteit Amsterdam. I'm teaching a course on global history. And part of the course is about why are some parts in the world at some moments in history more powerful than others. Now, what my Dutch students learn in school, they learn about colonization of Indonesia. They learn about the successes of Europe, and they learn in school, in secondary school, SMP, SMA, they learn about, oh, this is, Europe became prosperous because Europe is special, is successful. They were more enterprising, Europeans were better organized. There are all sorts of explanations. Even in Europe, there was the discovery of the spectacles. And spectacles is important because with spectacles, you can extend your productive hours. So that made Europe more productive than other parts of the world. I think in Indonesia, you also learn about colonization, of course, and then the story is different. So the Netherlands colonized Indonesia in the past because the Dutch and the VOC was more exploitative, more cruel. Daendels was a very cruel governor general. But also in that story, the focus is too much on Europeans, on the Netherlands. So what I do, and I think this is wrong. So this is important. This leads to wrong understanding of the situation in the world. So what I try to do in my course, Global History, is to tell my students another story, and in which Europe only becomes a province of the whole world. Europe is just a peninsula to Asia. Asia is far bigger, far more important than Europe. And for instance, if you ask then, yeah, but why at some point did industrialization begin in Europe? It's not because Europeans were special, not at all, but it's a combination of partly simply good luck. If you compare the economy of Europe with the economies in Asia, Asia was far more advanced, more prosperous until the 18th or even 19th century. But the cities in especially England, they were very fortunate because they had coal very close to the cities. So when they start to industrialize, coal was just next to Liverpool, was just next to Manchester, was just next to Birmingham. This is just, and the story is far more complicated than this. But to get a good understanding of history helps to get a better understanding of what is happening today. How have our societies been shaped? So to get a more nuanced understanding of society today. So we need history in order to understand our society. And this applies to Europe, this applies to Indonesia, this applies to Papua. Second, so we need history to understand the world of today. But we must also recognize there is not just one story in history, there are different stories in history. Let me give an example. Now, again, I take the example of the history of Indonesia, Revolusi Indonesia, atau Indonesia Merdeka. In history books in Indonesia, this is a story of pahlawan Indonesia, pemuda yang memakai bambu runcing. It's a struggle against the brave struggle of Indonesian soldiers, Indonesian pemuda against the Dutch army. And I like, when I'm in Indonesia, I love to see Tugu Pahlawan, atau Tugu Revolusi. And you often see these images of Dutch people with big noses. And you see now you see me from the front, but if you just look at the side, I have a big nose. So I recognize myself in these images. And it's true. This is what happened. It is true. It's a true story, but it's only one story. There are other stories as well. So for instance, there was another story of not everybody in Indonesia wanted a singular state. There was also at some point support for a federasi, Indonesia Serikat. This is now almost forgotten, but it was for a moment part of the story. I just read an article about orang Maluku yang membantu knil, atau mungkin anjing Nika. And that's also part of the story, but there are other stories about the Moluccans. There are also Moluccans who fought on the side of Republiek Indonesia. And now in the Netherlands, for a long time, the story about Revolution Indonesia was, we fought for 4 years, we Dutch people, we fought for 4 years. In the end, we lost, and sovereignty was transferred to Indonesia. And for a long time, Dutch people would say independence began in 1949. No, it's not 1949. It is, of course, 1945. It should be 17 Agustus. But now there are also other stories of not just the Dutch fighting for 4 years against Republiek Indonesia, but there's growing recognition of the violence perpetrated by the Dutch army and Dutch soldiers against Indonesians. This is more and more being discussed and being researched. But there are more stories. There is also a story about Indonesian armies killing Dutch civilians. And there are also stories about hardly studied Indonesian soldiers killing other Indonesians. So the point I want to make is we need to understand history in order to understand society today. But when we study history, I hope that we give room to different stories. There's not just one story, there are different stories and they all need to be told. Now the third point, if I still have time. Masih ada waktu? Ya, boleh. The third point is, so we need history. We need to listen to more than just one story, but we also have to look critically at the sources. So what is critical history? Well, to begin with, critical history means, once again, accepting different stories. There is not one hegemonic or most powerful story. There are different stories and we need to listen all of them. And we have to look at, we have to understand if there is a story, who has an interest in that story. So take once more the example of orang Maluku as anjing nikah. And maaf kalau ada orang Maluku, if I offend you, that's not at all what I want to do, of course. Kalau ada orang Maluku anjing nikah, who has an interest in this story? Who promotes this story? If orang Maluku also joined the Republik Indonesia, who has an interest in promoting that story, telling that story? So critical history means looking at what are the interests involved in a particular analysis. What power constellations have an impact on the historical analysis that we make? I can give you another example from my own teaching. I just gave a course to my students, and the title of the course is History of Social Science. It looks at, because I'm an anthropologist, I'm a social scientist, it looks at how have social sciences developed over time. So the theme of the course is History of Social Science. We talk a lot about decolonizing the university. When you speak about decolonization, I guess you mean dekolonisatie Indonesia. But not only Indonesia has decolonized, the Netherlands still have to be decolonized as well. We have to free our thoughts, we have to liberate our thoughts, we have to decolonize our thoughts and become more modest, make Europe a province of the world and not the center of the world. Now, as part of this course, as part of this discussion with my students about decolonization of the Dutch university, there is a guest lecture by a scholar from Iran. It's not even a guest lecture. All the lectures are online now in Europe as much as in Indonesia. It's only a podcast. The podcast of this scholar from Iran says a decolonization of European universities is not possible top-down. Top-down decolonization is not possible. If you want to decolonize the universities, if you want to give more space for scholars from other parts of the world, others than Europe, it must come from the students. Only students can decolonize the universities. This is what they hear. Now, in the exam to the students, I gave them a text to read. And the text is about a university in England, where there's a whole process of decolonization. But in this case of the decolonization of the English university, it is the board of directors, the leaders of the university, who impose decolonized courses on the students. It's the leaders of the university who say, oh, if we want to decolonize the university, we must start courses on on racism. We must start courses on imperialism. We must start courses on global inequalities. And then what was the reaction of the students at this English university? The students protested. And the students said, we don't want all these courses about racism and decolonization. We want courses about English literature. Now let me explain, why do I tell you this long story? Because I can imagine Bapak-bapak Ibu pusing, ini tentang apa? So the point I want to make is, we need history. In history, we need different stories. We have to look at different stories. And one way to look at different stories is to do critical history. I'm giving you an example of critical history. In my course, there is a guest lecturer who says decolonization of European universities cannot be done top down. It must come from the students. Then in the exam, I asked the students to comment on an article from the BBC about an English university, and the article shows the decolonization of this European university goes top down, but the students protested and said, we don't want decolonization. Now my question to you is, so this is clearly a contradiction between the article about the situation in England and the podcast which told the students, oh, but decolonization must come from the students. Question to you, you guess. About 500 students took this exam. 500 mahasiswa ada ujian ini. How many of the 500 students remarked, oh, we learned in the podcast, in a guest lecture, decolonization must come from students, but in this article, this is a case where the decolonization comes top down. It's university leaders who want to decolonize the program, but the students protested against you. Out of 500 students, my question to you, how many observed this discrepancy, this contradiction between what they learned and the case study that was asked at the exam? 500 mahasiswa? 300? 100? Out of 500 students, only one, hanya satu, yang in the answer to the question, to the exam said, hey, this is interesting. This case study goes against our lectures. So that's why I emphasize, when you teach history, you must teach students, pupils, to look critically at the sources. In my students, only 1 out of 500 really looked critically at this case. Only 1 out of 500. So it is difficult to have this critical approach to history, but I think it is essential. So to wrap up, and again, I apologize, I don't speak about Papua, but I think I make general comments that can be applied throughout Indonesia. The importance of history to understand society today. Secondly, when we study history, to allow different stories, to listen to different versions of history. And third, when you do history, to look critically at our sources, ask who has an interest in the stories that we tell, and to reflect critically on this. And I am done, but I can add 1 or 2 additional comments, if I may. But
Sure, Dr. Freek.
Let me add 1 point. This is a really different point, but it's close to my heart. You may know I'm bukan hanya peneliti di Indonesia, tapi saya juga editor satu majalah. Majalah judulnya Bijdrage tot de taal en volkenkunde. Ini jurnal, bukan majalah, ini jurnal yang berfokus pada Indonesia. Seringkali ada makalah yang dikirim oleh peneliti Indonesia, tapi sayang sekali kebanyakan ditolak, tidak diterima untuk publikasi. Kenapa? Saya mau menerangkan ini. En ini frustrasi besar untuk peneliti Indonesia dan frustrasi besar bagi Freek juga sebagai editor jurnal ini. Kenapa ini? Orang Indonesia sering kali berpikir ini masalah bahasa. Karena jurnal dalam bahasa Inggris bahasa yang sulit sekali. Ini alasan pokok kenapa artikel terus-menerus ditolak. Tapi bukan itulah. Tentu saja bahasa sulit, tapi bukan itulah masalah yang terbesar. Alasan kenapa kenapa artikel ditolak, karena tidak ada hubungan dengan diskusi yang lebih besar, yang lebih lanjut. The manuscripts are rejected because they're beautiful case studies of things that happen in Indonesia, but then what is missing is a reflection. How does this case fit into wider themes, in wider discussions? And the same thing I'm asking now for my presentation. So it's not about Papua in particular, it's about bigger issues, but please try to make the connections between a more general story and the topic of today. Dan sekian dulu, terima kasih sekali.
Thank you, Rektor Freek, for the interesting talk. We have learned a lot today from you, and thank you for being here. And we are about to go to the next session, or presentation, or speech from our honored speakers, our guest speakers from Indonesia. Ibu Profesor Dr. Amany Lubis, LCMA. She's the Rector of UIN, Universitas Islam Negeri Syarif Hidayatullah, from Jakarta, Indonesia. And because she's an expert in the field of education, just like Dr. Freek and historian in history. So Prof. Dr. Amany, we are curious about your recommendations on how to form the best model of how to open the room or space for all Papuan people to improve education and implement the education in Papua in general. So to Professor Dr. Amany Lubis, we are pleased to give you the floor, or I mean the screen again, and big hands for Professor Dr. Amany Lubis. Oh, please unmute, Prof. You still unmute yourself, Prof.
Yeah.
Bisa dibuka, ya.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you, Prof.
Sorry. Yeah. Thank you, Bapak Ebet Litai, Bapak Syarifuddin, Mbak Rinta, for having me in this webinar. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Honorable Bapak Ebet Litai, the founder of Indonesian diaspora in the Netherlands, and distinguished speakers, Professor Freek Colombijn from Vrije Universiteit, and also my colleague Ibu Dr. Rosmaida Sinaga. Thank you very much, and I would like to discuss about the future of education in Papua, best practices and lesson learned. This occasion is very important, and I'm very glad to be here with you, with the sisters and brothers in the Netherlands and also from all over the world, because the topic about Papua is always interesting. I've been 4 times to Papua in many cities, and also having to travel there. I adore it. The island and also the people. They're very kind, and we learn a lot from the Papuans, and also from visiting the land, because it's very it's amazing. I've also myself involved in the efforts to empower women and Papuan people, especially in the field of education and culture. And as for the Dutch, the Hollands, I visited once to Amsterdam, Den Haag, and Leiden, just once in 2015. But I learned about the Hollands, of course, a long time ago, and since also the Dutch was the colonial of Indonesian archipelago. So that we know about the Netherlands, and the special thing is my supervisor of master's degree and doctorate from Indonesia is a Dutch. He is the professor. He was. He is late now. The former. My supervisor is Professor Johan Moleman from Leiden University. He just passed away in 2016. So I give the contribute to my education and my knowledge to him, because I learned a lot from him. Alhamdulillah. Papua and West Papua. Papua and West Papua provinces are categorized as 3T region. 3T is an abbreviation from tiga wilayah yang tertinggal, terdepan, dan terdalam. The meaning is the 3T region, namely underdeveloped, outermost, and underdeveloped areas in Indonesia. Papua and West Papua are included in this 3T region, which still requires special concern by the Indonesian government and all of us, especially in the field of education. Currently, the Indonesian government provides various special facilities to equalize or to make at the same level the quality of education and human resources in Papua. As for the 18 Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, implemented in Indonesia, so the spirit is no one left behind. So Papua also is in the mainstream of our interest. Demographically, based on data obtained from the representative of Population and Family Planning Board in Papua Province, BKKPN, the population of Papua in 2020 was recorded about 4.3 million, and with the nationally literacy rate of 21.9%, and was ranked as the lowest education level in Indonesia, which is 27.44%. Yeah, according to that case law number 20 2003 about the national education system provides full guarantees to all Indonesian students, young generations, to obtain access to proper education, especially for the 3T zones. The government is focusing now on increasing the percentage level of education and quality of human resources in Papua. So the future of education and quality of life in Papua could be improved. The situation of education in Papua can be explained in some points as the following. First, currently, Papua has 117 kindergarten. And as for elementary school, there are 13,588. For junior high school, we have 2,916. For high school, 1,133 high schools. And as for vocational schools, there are 366 schools with proper and adequate buildings and facilities. So in order to improve the quality of education in Papua for the future generation of the Papuans, Indonesian government, through the decree of Ministry of Education and Culture in 2019, continues to strive to increase the number of school buildings and improve the quality of building infrastructure, so that the Papuans will have an easy access to education. Yeah, and the second, as a form of improving the quality of the youth and also educated generation in Papua, the Indonesian government have collaborations with various private institutions and they build higher education institutions and universities in variety with variety of departments of study programs, such as medicine, agriculture, engineering, mining, besides sociology and religious studies. So the purpose of the existence of these all departments is to prepare the Papuans to become agents of change and driving agents in realizing an adequate Papua and West Papua provinces. The high and have high competitiveness in the future. The government expects with the variety of study programs in Papua, these higher education institutions are able to produce leaders who are able to manage Papua, the assets, the natural resources of Papua, including the facilities of tourism, of culture, the very rich culture and ethnicity in Papua. Yeah, and as Sister Rinta said, that in Papua there are many scholarships for the Papuans youth and for the youth. So we have scholarship program from the Education Fund Management Institute, or LPDP, and also affirmation for secondary education, ADEM, affirmation for higher education, ADIC, and also education fees for poor students with achievements, bidik misi. Special policy also for teachers, as well as the Center for International Studies at Cendrawasih University. They prepare human resources for Papua, and also the construction of new state universities, state-owned universities in Biak, Numfor, and Jayawijaya regencies. So this is an important improvement in the field of education. Also, in additional, the government of Indonesia cooperate with various educational institutions and NGOs to have trainings and programs for youth, so that they can have knowledge and experiences and can overcome the backwardness in Papua. And also Indonesia, or we are all have the interest to educate the young people to have the capabilities, and have moral values in accordance with the principles of Pancasila, and also based on our constitution of 1945 of the Republic of Indonesia. So that with these principles, we want the people of Papua, or the Papuans, to concentrate, mainly the local government of Papua, to concentrate, to give the opportunity to its own people to progress, to elevate, so that the Papuan communities can be more dynamic, progressive, and also prosperous. These various initiatives include the establishment of the Institute of Home Governance Affairs, IPDN in Papua, Sorong State Middle School of Fisheries Business in Sorong, Sorong Health Polytechnic in West Papua. There are also institutes of Islamic religious or Islamic studies, IAIN, in Jayapura, IAIN Fatahul Muluk, and also in Sorong. There is IAIN Sorong. So these are the efforts done by the people, by the communities of Papua, and also by the government of Indonesia. And the second part of my paper is about the future of education in Papua. It's very prospective because of several reasons. First of all, the factors that influence the development and the future of education in Papua are external and internal factors. So all of these factors can make progress to the educational fields, besides the socio-economic condition in Papua. It's now raising, so that the local governments can collaborate with all parties to have these internal factors to be invested, and also at the same time as internal factors. Also, we know that there are internal political situations in Papua, so that we hope that all of the obstacles will be overcome soon, inshallah. And in educational fields, in the past, the Netherlands government have cooperation with the Ministry of Religious Affairs of Indonesia. The program is called INIS, I forgot the what's the abbreviation of INIS, but it's very useful. It's strengthening the capacity of academic staff in Indonesia. But up till now, there are cooperation, G2G cooperation called KNEW and also NOW. I cannot read, unfortunately. I like languages, and I learned more than 5 and 7 languages, but not the Dutch. But inshallah, I will learn the Dutch, and so that I can read the words perfectly. Okay, so but the government of the Netherlands also has invested in support to civil society. This is also to improve the quality of the people, the communities. Support to civil societies like LBH APIK and also many NGOs in Indonesia, also International Organization of Migration. So by this effort, the government, local government, especially in Papua, can manage, respond, and solve various problems of underdevelopment in Papua. And currently, the Indonesian government also has a very comprehensive program to provide a special education curriculum for Papua, for the Papuans, which have been integrated with the socio-economic conditions and the culture and environment of Papua in order to maintain the local wisdom and the Papuans both in the culture and customs. So this is, as I said, that I am involved. I involved also in like task force for fostering or strengthening women in culture and yes, in culture. So this is very much in my knowledge that the people of Papua also wants to progress, and the Indonesian government also, the local governments also have this desire, to develop, to improve the development and also the quality of the citizen in Papua in all walks of life. The important thing in the future of Papua is the various programs mentioned above to be able to be fulfilled, and also to improve not just in the educational fields, but it's also should be supported by the economic level of the people, and also the many things about technology, about digital literacy. So these are our concern now to have Papua better in the future, inshallah. I think that's all from me. Thank you for your kind attention. And if there is time, we have a discussion afterwards. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much, Professor Dr. Amany. It was very inspiring, and your recommendations for the urgent field of which field of education that will be needed in Papua. So for participants here, feel free to to post your questions, or maybe raise hand, and if you want to directly ask question in the Q&A sessions after our third speaker today. So we will go directly to the next session for our third speaker. This is so interesting, and that I cannot wait for, because we have very little or few researchers that have in-depth knowledge about Papua, and these special speakers, Dr. Rosmaida Sinaga, Ibu Dr. Rosmaida Sinaga from Universitas Negeri Medan. She is one of the lecturer there, and she is a historian. And what the interesting part is, she already wrote a book about the Dutch colonial era, which is it is also in the Papua in the history regarding the Papua and the Netherlands, and the interconnections perhaps. But this is already from long years ago, around 1898 until 1962, with the title Dutch of Colonial Era. And I'm not really sure if so many researchers in Indonesia doesn't really focus on Papua, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there are some researchers about Papua, but let's make sure the knowledge and the history about the Dutch colonial era from Ibu Dr. Rosmaida Sinaga. So please welcome Ibu Dr. Rosmaida Sinaga.
I'm sorry, I can speak English in fluent. Saya akan berbahasa Indonesia saja supaya lebih lancar. Oke, baik. Selamat sore, salam sejahtera buat kita semua. Saya akan membahas pola asrama sebagai apa ya? Pendidikan berpola asrama. Kenapa saya memilih pendidikan berpola asrama? Tentu karena pengalaman saya selama di Papua. Saya jadi dosen di Papua tahun 1992 sampai Desember 2016. Jadi ada sekitar 25 tahun saya mengabdi di Papua, dan saya tahu apa sih masalah pendidikan di Papua itu gitu. Memang tadi seperti yang disampaikan oleh Prof Amany, Bu Prof Lubis, memang banyak lembaga-lembaga pendidikan yang dibangun ya, bisa bertumbuh dan berkembang dalam diri setiap insan di Papua itu. Itu yang saya sampaikan. Terima kasih.
Thank you so much, Ibu Rosmaida Sinaga. Maybe I just want to make a conclusion from Ibu Sinaga in English, because it was so very fast in Indonesian language, because we are from the Netherlands and international, so perhaps not all understand Bahasa Indonesia in very fluent and fast. So basically from Ibu Rosmaida, Ibu Dr. Rosmaida encouraged to all of the government and all stakeholders, and I mean every part of people who care about the education and the life and the prosperity for Papuan people in Papua in general. So a better life in general for Papua. So Ibu Dr. Rosmaida encouraged to make a boarding or dormitory school, boarding school, that all of the students together with the teacher, especially all of the students, stay and live together in one house. And it's not only to go to school because the school is empty from a teacher. So maybe we encourage every part of the world to maybe become a teacher there and bring a better education. And so basically that is the part of the conclusion from Ibu Rosmaida to make a boarding school because it's very far away, and the geographical situation in Papua is quite different. To encourage all of the Papuan people also to go to school because it's very rare there, and to make it short, maybe from the YouTube, maybe people from abroad can also try to get maybe self-interpretation, and because I cannot see any questions from the participants and or the audience, even though we are so glad and honored that the participant today is from the YouTube is around almost 3,000, maybe around 2,000 and more. We are very surprised, and also from the platform of Zoom, we have only around 45, and now it's decreasing. But however, this is our first seminar from Rotary International. This is first understanding of Papua series. So it can be for the next term, we will conduct another webinar because we have, of course, limited time. So because there is no question so far, so I would like to ask for all of the speakers, each of speakers, Dr. Freek Colombijn, Professor Amany Lubis, and Ibu Rosmaida Sinaga to give a conclusion or more explanation or any suggestions, recommendations for a better education, the future education in Papua and for Papuan people in general. So first of all, maybe Dr. Freek Colombijn, could you give us more conclusion or explanation or recommendations, whatever? Please welcome.
Yeah, terima kasih sekali. To be honest, I'm a bit reluctant to give concrete recommendations. I don't think I'm in the right position to do so, but I find it interesting that we have, if you look at the presentations combined, I think they connect very well. So Professor Amany gave an overview of the needs and in terms of buildings and the facilities that are there. Dr. Rosmaida gave a slightly different perspective on other things that are needed, and buildings alone is not enough. And I emphasized in general terms the content, the kind of education that you would like to see, making a plea for giving a place to history, and also giving a different stories and looking critically at history. And I thought the presentation by Dr. Rosmaida was a perfect demonstration of that. So I think the presentations together give something of a direction in which Papua could go. Thank you.
So thank you, Dr. Freek. Maybe if there is any students from Papua, is it welcome, Prof, Dr. Freek, to get maybe your help to advise, or maybe there are some students who wants to get your opinion or recommendations to improve their knowledge how to study maybe in Netherlands, maybe because we found that I don't know for sure, there are some students from Papua. There are a lot, maybe also can be explained later, closing remarks from Bapak Dr. Ebet Litai to explain more a little bit just for a closing remarks. And now after Dr. Freek Colombijn gave us his closing remarks, now we ask Prof. Amany Lubis to give your closing remarks. Please welcome.
Thank you very much. I'd like to give my closing remarks or concluding remarks. I appreciate what have been said by Professor Freek Colombijn, and also Ibu Dr. Rosmaida Sinaga. So that's my perspective, that I always optimistic in seeing things, and without, of course, unknowing about the obstacles and also the predicaments of the situation in Papua. Of course, as I expect that most of you know better about Papua than me, but I'm optimistic always to have the situation in Papua bettered, and also with all our efforts and our good intention, we can develop Papua, inshallah, in the future. In my paper also, I quote Bapak Freddie Numberi perspective about development in Papua, and I admire him. He's very nationalist, of course, and he's very futuristic about Papua, so that we can learn. Yeah, all Papuans. I recommend that all Papuans read the book of Freddie Numberi. I have it now with me. Sorry. This is the book of Freddie Numberi. Is it clear? Yeah. It calls Laksamana dari Papua. This is very important to be read by the youth. And the second book is it clear? Yes. This is Mr. Christian Sohilait. He's the chairperson or the head office of Ministry of Education and Culture in Jayapura. He's very optimistic official, and I admire him also. So by this, I always choose the references which encourage me to be more close to be closer to the Papuans, women and men, and also in all ethnics in Papua. So this is my approach, my perspective to the future of education in Papua. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ibu Prof. Amany Lubis, for your closing remarks. This is very giving us hope, and we also would like the last short remarks from Ibu Rosmaida Sinaga, and later from Bapak Ebet too also as well. And Ibu Rosmaida Sinaga, could you give us again your short notice for our closing remarks, please?
Oke, terima kasih Bu Rita. Pembangunan pendidikan di Papua akan berjalan baik dengan kebijakan-kebijakan pemerintah yang memperhatikan kearifan-kearifan lokal yang ada pada masyarakat Papua. Terima kasih.
Thank you, Ibu Dr. Rosmaida. And basically, Ibu Rosmaida said that the regulations, it should be for the prosperity of Papuan people and in Papua in general. Thank you. And now please welcome Bapak Ebet Litai to give your closing remarks. Please welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Ibu Limida, for the time. First of all, I'm really glad that this first webinar, although there's some problems with the internet things, didn't went so well. But first things are always hard. But I'm really glad that we have made this to a success, that we have heard about the experience of Dr. Freek, that you have to see things in perspective, critically, and then there are always different stories from different people, different time. And adding that with the remarks of Professor, everyone is saying Professor Amany, so actually you can even make a brand Professor Amany, and then Dr. Gucci, Mr. Nike.
Amany.
Amany, but perhaps that's good for a next seminar or webinar. But with the input of Dr. Amany, which I was really astonished that we actually have something in common. We're all from Leiden University. It's really like it's been it's like it's been set up that we all have to be like the Leiden, sorry to say, Leiden Mafia or Leiden Club. But it all comes together again today, and we all have our input. And Professor Amany gives the data about her experience in Papua, and of also what she have learned from Professor Molenman. I think I don't know Professor Molenman because I'm mungkin bahasa Indonesia ABG. I'm still too young, but I think Dr. Freek knows Professor Molenman. But I think it's really good to hear your stories, your perspectives, and also that you're saying we need to do more. And doing more, that's actually the point of what Ibu Rosmaida says. Doing more. But doing more is not enough. You have to do more, putting it in the right context. And then it's actually like the circle is round again. What Dr. Freek started about the story, that you have to look in the historical perspective, in the right context. Dr. Rosmaida actually confirms that, although it was not set up, but they really told their own story. And with the input of this all, I think it's good also to end this webinar because some people are probably hungry, at least I am, but also good to have this like a first stepping stone for a next webinar. Because I always believe you have to start something, like an ink spot. You start small and slowly you're going bigger, greater. So slowly we get more input. And I want to say, actually, it's good that we have this now. We have some input, we have heard something. So hopefully the participants will join again. But also that we're not like in where I come from for Ambon, we don't do habis dansa pulang tidur. So where everyone is really having party, fun. So we have a lot of input. We have a lot of ideas and then we sleep again. And then everything is for nothing. And it will be really sad. So actually we hope with this Understanding Papua seminar, this is the first one to make it another one. And I want to add this and end also this from my side with a typical phenomena from my area, from Maluku, with the pantun. So I will end with the pantun and I will say, potong di kuku, rasa di daging. Webinar ini semoga bukan sia-sia, semoga ya, sia-sia atau kabar angin. Biarpun jauh di mata, tapi dekat di hati. Bangun nusa dan bangsa adalah harga mati. Demikian, terima kasih.
Terima kasih. Thank you, Bapak Ebet Litai, for your closing remarks to give us more spirit and energy. But however, we are finally come to the end of the webinar. So we would like to thank you for all of the participants, our honored guest speakers, and also for all of the organizers from the committee of the webinar. And we would like to hopefully this webinar will be beneficial for all the participants and in general for Papuan people. Hopefully we will conduct for the next webinar. This is because this is just the first time we make the series. And thank you for attention. See you next time and thank you for being here. So we will close the webinar and see you next time. Tot ziens.
Thank you. Okay, be healthy. Stay healthy.
Selamat sore, Bu Rektor.
Selamat sore.